Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ODOT's 2023 U.S. Bike Route Signage Project Overview. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation today, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have. Looking at the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel, please note also that a PDF resource is available for reference. With that, we will go ahead and turn things over to Kate Harley. Hello.
Hey, thanks so much for opening us up, Mike.
Yeah.
How do I sound?
You sound great.
Okay, great. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this informational webinar. As you are probably aware, this webinar is really specifically intended for the 109 local governments that are a part of our US Bike Route Signage Plan that I'm going to be talking about today. My name is Kate Harley. I'm the Active Transportation Manager at ODOT, and I've provided leadership in the development and designation of the state and US bike route system in Ohio, and continue to work with local governments and ODOT districts and others as it relates to implementing our strategic bike network. As you have questions today, please feel free to send those over to us using the questions panel, and I will be stopping kind of intermittently to answer some of those questions. And then also know that we'll have 10-ish minutes, 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the overview for other, just time for questions and answers. So definitely don't be shy, put those questions in as you have them, and I'll be happy to answer those. If for whatever reason we run out of time before we answer all the questions, also just know that I'll be able to follow up with you at the end of this. I'll be able to access all of your questions and get back to you as well. We also are recording this webinar, hopefully, so we'll be able to share this out as well. All right, so in general, over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to provide a little additional background on the US bike routes, an overview of this ODOT signage project specifically, talk a little bit about how local governments can participate, and then of course answer questions related to the project, talk about next steps. So just, really quick reminder, quick overview of the background. This is, we've been working for many years to establish a backbone system for biking in Ohio, one that would connect population centers and destinations within Ohio for travel, tourism, and recreation. And the US bike routes in Ohio are actually part of a nationwide bike network. What you see on the screen is the National Corridor Plan for the US bike route system. And there are segments of 5 US bike routes in Ohio, which encompass over 1,400 miles of both on-road and off-road sections. And another effort that really influenced what these US bike routes actually looked like, where they actually went through Ohio, was the existing trail system that we have in the state. So, as we were actually developing specific routes, to the best of our ability, we aligned these with shared use paths, including many of the flagship trail networks in the state, things like the Little Miami Scenic Trail or the North Coast Inland Trail, both of which are part of this kind of upcoming signage project. And that's because we ultimately want these bike routes to really identify those, safe connections across Ohio. So this is just a little map of what the US bike routes look like in Ohio today. We do consider this to be a living system, and we'll continue to work with local governments as projects are completed, to provide better connections between cities and destinations. And all of you would have, or all of your government entities would have submitted resolutions that look kind of like this over the past like 5 to 8 years, which is what allowed ODOT to actually submit and receive formal designation of most of our US bike routes across Ohio. And in fact, about a year ago, Ohio actually had the most miles of designated US bike routes in the entire country. And one of the opportunities that we have now that these routes are formally designated is to actually sign it using the official US bike route signage. So this is an image on the left of it's called the M19 alternative sign. It is reserved for use on designated US bike routes. And back in 2016, ODOT did a signage project where we signed US Bike Route 50, which is where this photo is from. And so we have some experience in the past deploying signage across an entire US bike route in the state. So similar to the process that ODOT took to provide signage along US Bike Route 50, we have secured the funding to sign a second set of priority US bike routes this year, or like over the next year-ish. So, oops. Oh yeah. And so although signage is not a requirement of the US bike routes, we don't have to sign them, you don't have to sign them, ODOT is supporting the installation of signs in order to increase awareness and expectation for bicyclists, and to provide residents and visitors with some wayfinding information along these 2 additional US bike routes. So for the upcoming project, we are including US Bike Route 25 and US Bike Route 30, which also includes a short alternative route, which is 230. And so by June of next year, our goal is to deploy signage along these 2 US bike routes in their entirety. So just a quick highlight of where these routes are. US Bike Route 25 provides a north-south connection from Cincinnati up to Toledo. And US Bike Route 30 provides an east-west connection up along kind of the northern part of the state, somewhat along Lake Erie, which is a pretty popular recreational route. And then you'll see, I should have updated this map. It says 130, it should say 230, sorry. But you'll see that alternative route that hugs the lake even closer, connects between Cleveland and Sandusky, which is where we have Cedar Point. Both US Bike Route 30 and 25 represent bike routes that have some significant miles of trail, but also have some large sections of on-road route as well that we think would really benefit from having some signage, increasing that awareness and expectation from drivers that bicyclists will be using this route. And then you'll also see on the map a couple of our other US bike routes. I did mention US Bike Route 50, which has also been formally designated and fully signed a couple years ago. So as you know, in order to successfully execute a project of this scale, it's really critical for us to engage with the local governments who actually serve as the maintenance authority for these roads or trails that make up these US bike routes. And so that's where, these 109 different local governments come in. That's where all of you on the phone come in. There are over 100 local governments where we are actually recommending to install signage per our signage plan. And there's even more local governments who are along this route, but for which there just isn't necessarily a sign on their property. So we've worked with even more local governments than this set to actually, designate these routes and get feedback on them and stuff like that. I'm going to do a quick check of the questions pod before moving on.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. At this time, we do not see any questions submitted, but as a
Great.
reminder for our audience, please feel free to use the questions box to send in questions at any time.
Okay, great. So just shifting gears a little bit, I'm going to talk very specifically about the scope of this current signage project, what the opportunity is to participate, talk a little bit about the schedule, and a couple of things like that. Okay, so ODOT signage plan includes the installation of one of these signs, which is called the M19 alternative, and a direction arrow at each of the turns along the US bike route. So there'll be one sign and an arrow at every single turn, in each direction. And we will also install a confirmation sign where turns are 5 or more miles apart. So those confirmation signs are, as they sound, just meant to provide a basic sign to confirm you're still on the route in instances where you might have gone, 5 miles without seeing any other sign. There's 2 sizes that will be involved in this project, 2 sizes of sign. We'll be using the 18 by 24 sign for on-road locations. And then we'll be using a slightly smaller 12 by 18 sign for locations that are on trails or off-road locations. There is one very special scenario. There's one other option available to trail authorities if they are in like a specific conservation district where signage is prohibited. So for those local governments who are serving as a trail maintenance authority within like a water conservation district, you have the option to request pavement markings in lieu of signage. The plan here is that ODOT would install a pavement marking using the US bike route image. It would likely be like 18 by 42 inches. And we would place only one of these in lieu of 2 signs where, one in each direction. There would just be one pavement marking. So again, this is not an option for on-road sections. This would only be an option for trails, and we'd only offer this if signage was actually prohibited by policy. There's a couple nuances with this as well. We aren't really able to mix and match, so local trail authorities would have to take on the pavement markings or the signs in their entirety. So let me talk a little bit about the spreadsheet that you would have received. So hopefully everybody on this call would have received a pretty robust email from your ODOT district with a few key resources. One of those resources is actually like an overview kind of handout, which is also attached to the handout section of this webinar. That's like a primary resource to be checking out. One of the other primary resources is the actual signage spreadsheet, which is an Excel document that you would have had access to. This is really important because this is our way of communicating where we would be putting signs per our signage plan. And this will also serve as Exhibit A, which is referenced in the maintenance agreements, because you would have to sign a maintenance agreement to participate in the project. So this spreadsheet's really important. As you are reading through this, just know that, a few key things to look out for is obviously the owner. So making sure that you're reviewing all of those sign locations that are under your jurisdiction and list you as the owner. This next section is really showing you information about the route. So this is saying, that this would be US Bike Route 25. That's what would be on the sign. It provides the name of the actual street or the name of the trail where the sign will be located, the direction that it's facing. So, this would be the sign you see if you're traveling north. And then, the specific arrow that's going to be placed underneath it. And then this is the actual location of the sign using the latitude and longitude. So this is kind of an important identifier because it's really the exact location for which we would place the sign. And we also provide you with a Google Map link that you can just quickly click on, and it'll actually, drop a pin at that latitude and longitude where that sign would go. And then finally, this just shows the sign codes that are related to the signs that we would be using. So I mentioned earlier, the M19A is that official US bike route sign. That's the sign that actually says like US bike route 25. And then the M6 is a directional arrow. So since this example is on the road, we would be using the 18 by 24 size sign. And there's a few other details that are provided in the spreadsheet, some information on like the types of posts and like the height of posts. There's 14-foot posts on the road, 11-foot on the trails. So there's a few other details, but as you're looking over this spreadsheet, that's just kind of a basic overview of the amount of information that you're going to see and sort of understanding how to see which signs are on your jurisdiction and how to sort of look at where they are on a map. Also, just wanted to point out that the combination of these two signs, one is a US bike route sign and one is an arrow, it really just constitutes one location. So you're going to see like two lines in your spreadsheet, but this only represents one location, one latitude and longitude, because both of those signs will be located on the same post. So just wanted to make that clear as well. One of the other resources that we've also provided to you related to understanding where the signs are located is this Google map where you can actually see a dot on every section, on every place where we're recommending a sign. So you can view all of the locations pretty quickly and easily using this Google Map link. You can zoom into your area to quickly review where these signs are recommended. So just for example, I clicked on one of these dots, I zoomed in, clicked on one of these dots, and it also pulls up some of the basic information. So it's right there and easy to see. So it lists things like the owner. In this case, this is on an ODOT roadway outside of a municipality. So ODOT would be the maintenance authority. And then again, it repeats that latitude and longitude for the sign location. So just wanted to show you kind of another way to check out where these signs are so that you can get an understanding of how many signs are going to be in your community, how many you'll be responsible for maintaining, and make a decision about if and how you want to participate in the project. For those of you who want more information, we also have the ability to provide you with a signage shapefile if, by request, if that would sort of help you to look at sort of your transportation system and, some of your information and overlay those sign locations. That is a shapefile that we could provide to you. And I'll have my email at the end of this too, where you could email me for that request. Okay, so in terms of participation, the most important thing to know is that local maintenance agreements have to be submitted in order to participate and to receive the signage. So if you are interested in participating in this project, if you are interested in receiving signs at no cost, what we need from local governments is a signed maintenance agreement to be submitted to us. So sign maintenance does include replacement when necessary. If US bike route alignments are adjusted over time, local authorities would be responsible for relocating those signs. And then of course, if you look at the sign spreadsheet and think like we'd really like to have more signage than is presented here, facility owners absolutely have the authority to include additional signs outside of this project at your own discretion and cost using engineering judgment. Okay, I have a question that came through. It's a really important question. I'm gonna talk about that right now. So a question came in that said, what do I do if some of my agency's signs are incorrectly listed with a different owner on Google Maps? Um, so in general, um, one of the most important things as you're reviewing this content, one of the most important things we need to be sure of is that we have correctly identified the right local maintenance authority for the location of the sign. So as you're reviewing your spreadsheet, if you see that you are assigned a sign in a location that actually isn't your jurisdiction, that's something for us to be aware of. And again, that's because the, the this is going to be, where we're going to install signs. This spreadsheet is going to outline how many signs are, belong to you and are under your maintenance authority. So if we have the owner listed incorrectly, that is information that you should email me about directly, because I will make sure that the spreadsheet is updated, and I will actually send you an updated version of the spreadsheet, because that's important as you sign off on the maintenance agreement. So I hope that answers the question. I will say the Google Map link is kind of like an extra resource just to help you visualize and look at locations. When in doubt, I would look at the spreadsheet and kind of click on that Google Map link. If you see some sort of discrepancy, you can also feel free to reach out to me. Hopefully there aren't discrepancies, but yeah, if you're looking for clarity on which signs belong to you, that's definitely a good reason to connect with me specifically. Okay. And then in terms of the agreement, this is another thing that you would have received from from your district. You would have actually gotten 2 maintenance agreements. You only need to execute one of them. So you only need to sign one of them. It just depends on how you want to participate in the project. And I'm going to talk about that more in depth soon, but I just wanted to kind of put these on the screen just to show you that this is actually a maintenance agreement template. You will insert your information into this, and you'll have to have, an official signatory be able to sign off on the maintenance agreement and what it represents. And then again, the agreement does talk about and reference Exhibit A, which is that spreadsheet. So again, if you see any issues with the spreadsheet in terms of which ones are in your jurisdiction, I will get that updated for you before you sign. And then just a quick overview of the anticipated project schedule. So April 1st is a key milestone for us. We have to receive local maintenance agreements. Those have to be submitted to us by April 1st. So time is of the essence, particularly for local governments who might need to bring this up to council to do readings. If you're really interested in participating and for some reason are not going to be able to get those done in time for April 1st, you can reach out to us, but that is really our deadline for participating. So definitely get in touch with me ahead of time if you're going to be, if that deadline is going to be tight for you. The project will also include a 2-week staking process closer to the time where we would begin construction. We did this with US Bike Route 50 several years ago, and basically this involves our contractor putting out construction stakes in the locations that we will be installing signs. And this is sort of a last minute check right before construction where local governments could make very minor adjustments. And so for those of you who send us maintenance agreements, we'll have your contact information and we'll let you know about when we plan to do the 2-week staking process and what to do if you have some minor adjustments. So there is sort of like one final check that will be available to you as part of this 2-week staking process. And then we anticipate that construction will take place between December of this year through May of next year. So we should be done with construction by June of 2024. Great, so next up, I'm going to just talk through very specifically the options for participating in the project. Given the magnitude of the project, how many people we're working with, the large geographic span of the project, we're providing leadership over this and providing locals with a couple options for which they can sign on to participate. But overall, this is really going to be kind of an opt-in to the project as scoped or an opt-out situation. So participation essentially means that you as a local government are electing to receive signs at no cost and are agreeing to maintain them in the future, just like any other sign that you might have on your transportation system. Something that was sent to you again in that big email and is also linked and highlighted on the one pager, which is uploaded into this webinar, is a link to this form stack. This is the US Bike Route Signage Project local participation form stack. So this is what you need to submit to ODOT by April 1st. This is your way of opting in to the project. And in order to participate, you'll have to select how you want to participate, provide a little bit of information, and then you will be required to attach a signed maintenance agreement to the form before you submit it. And this is just a snapshot of kind of the top portion of the form stack. Okay, so here are the options to participate. So option 1, ODOT installation. This is perhaps the easiest option for you. And it consists of having ODOT contractors provide and install the signage. So if you are electing to have ODOT contractors provide and install the signage, this means that you are okay with the sign locations and you are authorizing ODOT contractors to place signs within your right-of-way. Additionally, you are agreeing to maintain the signage for its useful life once it's installed. And it's important to note that through this sort of form stack process, we aren't able to make location adjustments. If you know that you want to make some adjustments, then you might want to consider using the other option, which is where we would deliver the signage for you to install with local forces. So again, this is just showing you, if you click on have ODOT contractors provide and install signage, at the bottom of the form stack, you'll be required to attach this sign installation and maintenance agreement. So it's actually telling you which maintenance agreement you need to submit because of the option that you selected. So again, one thing to note is that we can't accept changes. So you can't say, hey, can you move this one and move that one as part of this process. I did mention earlier, minor adjustments can be communicated during that 2-week staking process. There is a comment box at the bottom of this submission form, and there's really only a couple things that you could give us feedback at this time if you want ODOT to install. So a couple examples of the things you you could request, and if you need to do it, you should do it in this comment box, would be if you want us to remove any of the signs from the plan. So you could comment remove and then list the sign location, which by using the full latitude and longitude, and we would just strike that from the plan. So this might be a situation if you are reviewing your signage plan, looking at it on the map, and you want signs, you're generally fine with where they are, but you just feel like a couple of them are not necessary, or you just don't want that many signs along that section of your road or trail, you have the ability to tell us to remove it from the plan, and we will just simply strike it off the plan when we go to finalize the plan. The other thing that you might say is if you are one of those local jurisdictions that maintains a trail and you are within a special conservation district where signage is prohibited, then you would also use this comment section to simply state that you would be requesting pavement markings. So the same maintenance agreement would be signed for the pavement markings. It would still be that same agreement, but it would just be, you would be in charge of maintaining the pavement markings into the future. And just so that you know, from a details perspective, the 2-week signage or the 2-week staking process would be, these would be very minor changes. So just like small shifts that, have come up, nothing large. And I'm just kind of checking my questions box. Okay, question just came in. Are signs going to be mounted on existing posts where they are present? So the vast majority of this signage plan would be on new posts. So that could be something that you communicate through the 2-week staking process, is if there's a post very close to where we're recommending we put in the signs, you could move that constructions, or you could tell us to just put it on a post that already exists and give us that latitude and longitude. But for the most part, these are going to be put up if you elect to have ODOT do it on new posts. If you would prefer to use existing posts in your community, you could consider having them delivered, and then you could install those with local forces on existing posts potentially. Okay, so that was option 1. ODOT contractors will furnish and install signage per the plan, and the maintenance agreement means that locals will maintain that into the future. The second option would be if you want to have the signs and posts delivered to you, and then you would install them using local forces. And our maintenance agreement asks, for this to be done within 90 days. We just want to make sure that the entire bike route is getting signed at relatively the same time period. And so, yeah, and you don't need to give us the authority to go onto your property, but you're basically just saying, if you deliver us the signs and posts, we will install them per the plan, or using engineering judgment to make minor adjustments, but install them using local forces. When you click this option, we do ask that you provide us with some very specific information for delivery. So we need to have like a name associated with who to contact, who to put down for delivery. We ask for a non-residential delivery address. And so there's just a couple extra things we ask for if you want to have this signage and post delivered to you. And then again, it'll also require you to attach the signed maintenance agreement. So this is like the maintenance only agreement that's associated with this option of the project. And then again, in terms of the comments, I think probably the only comment that you would include within this is if you wanted the pavement markings because you're in the special district. And so then we would potentially deliver those markings to you for you to install. You could also, if you wanted to strike anything from the plan, you could do that. Or we could just provide you with the number of signs per plan. And if you ended up, not putting one of them up, you could keep that in your stores for maintenance down the road. Okay, question came in through the pod. Okay, so if we are aware of a road project that may impact a sign location, how do we communicate that? So if there's a road realignment, a roundabout, stuff like that. That's a good question. That is something that we could work with you on during the 2-week staking process. If you're aware of a pretty major project that would impact this, you could make a comment of that. You could comment that in your submission just to put that on our radar. And then we could potentially make those adjustments. Another option would be to just opt for delivery. And then you could just install those signs, after the fact. Once the project is done, you could just have those signs ready to put them up where they need to go. So that might be the easiest thing. If you know that there's going to be a project impacting it, you might want to opt for delivery. Otherwise, we could potentially make that adjustment during the 2-week staking process. And if you're concerned about that, or you feel like that is kind of a major thing that's going to impact this project for you, that would be another reason to contact me to talk a little bit further about how we might want to handle that. All right, the last option would be to opt out of the project. So, finally, we hope you're on the call because you're interested in participating. We really want to encourage local governments to participate in this project. It's our goal to provide, continuous signage, at some sort of, routine amount throughout the US bike route. And so the more communities that opt in, the better. That just means that there's more, more signage along the system. So we hope you opt in, but we understand if you don't want to, if you don't want to maintain these US bike route signs, or even if you just would rather coordinate what this signage looks like on your own, that is absolutely something that you can do. So if you review our signage plan and would rather, control where signs are and where you want to place them, maybe you want to have more signs, maybe you want to have less signs, that's something that you might want to consider, is if you want to take on this type of signage yourself locally using local resources. So you could either go to this form stack and actually type in the name of your government and say that you're not interested, and then we will stop emailing you. Or if we just don't hear from you by April 1st, we will begin the process of striking signage locations from the plan. So if we do not hear from you by April 1st, we will start the process of removing everybody that didn't respond from our statewide signage project. And for some communities, I've talked with a lot of different groups from across the state about this project, and definitely understand that there are some other larger regional trails, wayfinding that's being developed. And so people are taking, different tacks for incorporating some of the US bike route information within kind of other local or regional signage. So that is absolutely appropriate. But if you are interested in receiving these signs and just having these signs show up in your community at the locations that we've provided, we definitely encourage you to opt into the project. And then last thing I wanted to show you is just this one pager. Again, it's loaded up onto this webinar. You would have also received it from your ODOT district. Just pointing this out because it really provides you with a summary of kind of everything you need to know about the project, what it is, you know, what your role would be, what ODOT's role would be, and it links you to all of the very important links that I've talked about. And so the presentation I just gave you is pretty much just an intensive overview of this document. So definitely look it over and you know, continue to submit your questions. I have pretty much come to the end of all of the information I wanted to cover with you all. And this is the email address that I am using for kind of all of the questions associated with this project. So please, you know, feel free to use it, and I can, you know, continue to communicate with you over email, or you can call me if you want. So this is kind of the best way to get in touch with ODOT, with me in particular, about the US Bike Route Signage Plan. All right, so now I'm gonna kind of just shift into Q&A. So I'll be looking at the questions box. I have a few kind of questions in my reserves that I'll go through. So this is a follow-up question from somebody. Okay, we have an I think they're saying we have an off-road trail that will be built by 2026 that will probably be incorporated into the US Bike Route system. Can installation along the state highway portion of this new Okay, so they're basically saying, hey, if we have a project that's going to be built in 2026, can we delay the signage from going on to the on-road portion so that they don't have to be relocated? So in general, I think the best response to this is if you know of a project that's coming up and you do not want to relocate the signs, then you could have them delivered, and then you would be in charge of putting them up once the project opens. I will say that the US Bike Route system is, you know, it is a living system. It may shift over time, and so some of that maintenance could be relocating them. But it's also meant to, you know, provide information on the connections that are available today. So I don't think it's a bad thing for the signs to be installed on the roadway portion if we feel like people are using that section for biking, and then to pull them up and put them into the new location in a couple years when your project is built. So you have a couple options. You know, it's up to you. If we're talking about a section of the roadway that is under your authority, if you don't want it signed right now, then it won't be signed right now. We cannot place signs without your agreement in place, kind of giving us consent to install them. So you do control that aspect. If you don't want them signed right now, you could have them delivered, or you could just opt out of the project because maybe it just doesn't work for you at this time, which we understand. There's only so much flexibility within the project. It's just kind of the nature of, like I said, such a large geographical span. You know, the timing may not be perfect for everyone, so kind of up to you how you want to proceed on that one. Having it delivered, or opting out, or having them put in and then moving them. If we choose a self-install option, is it possible to do a mix of signs and pavement markings? Not all of our locations are in areas where signs are prohibited, but some are. Great question. We're not able to do a mix and match at this time. So you would either opt for all signs, and if you wanted to strategically locate those on posts that already exist, you could do that. Or you would have to do all pavement markings. Or you could decide what you want to be part of the ODOT project. If you want us to do the pavement markings, then you could, strike some things from the plan and only have us install the pavement markings at the locations you want the pavement markings, or vice versa with the signs. So I know that's kind of nuanced, and that only relates to kind of a handful of governments on the phone. So yes, so just to be clear, one of the limitations of the project is we're not able to account for a mixing and matching of signs and pavement markings at this time. Good question.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So in the chat box, we've copied all of the questions so far, and there were earlier questions 2, 3, and 4. Maybe we can take a look and make sure we've talked about those as well.
Okay. Yeah, and actually I will repeat, and I have a couple other kind of questions, kind of like some frequently asked questions I'll go over next. But I do want to just repeat again one of the first questions I received, which was what to do if some of my agency signs are incorrectly listed with a different owner. So just know that that is something that you should contact me directly about, is to make sure that we have correctly identified the owner of the signs at the locations that we are recommending signs. So if we have sort of miscorrelated a location to a local owner, that is something that we would update in our signage spreadsheet and send back to you to be able to reference in your agreement. And that's really important because that also tells us how many signs to deliver to your specific government. So if we only have 5 signs that we think belong to you, but there's actually 7 signs, we are only delivering 5 to you. And so that could just create issues down the road. I've also gotten some questions from, again, just a couple of people that I think this applies to. Some local governments installed US bike route signage themselves locally once we were designated, which, like I said, is absolutely an option. Local governments have the authority to install signage on their own system, of course, and those of you who are part of this designated US bike route system can now use the sort of the formal US bike route signage, which is reserved for use on designated bike routes. But for those of you who might have already installed signs on your portion of the US bike route, you have some options. You could opt out, or you could have them delivered. We're still willing to provide the number of signs and posts that we have in our plan. So you can install more signs. You could replace your signs if for whatever reason these signs are higher quality or something, or you could keep them for maintenance purposes down the road. We just ask that we want the routes, like I said, to be sort of fully signed around the same time period. So the goal would be, if you don't have signs up and we deliver those signs to you, that they do get placed within 3 months. For those of you, some questions I've sometimes got in the past, which I think I've addressed, is if we want more signage than what ODOT is providing, what do we do? Again, we are willing to provide the signs and posts at no cost per the plan. But if you see a need or a desire for more signage, that is something that you could elect to do locally using local resources, engineering judgment, on where to locate those signs. I've also gotten a question from maybe like one local government about posts. So we do provide information within the spreadsheet about the types of posts that we're using. And I know that sometimes local governments use different posts. Unfortunately, we'll only be providing one type. And so if you opt to have that delivered, we're going to be sending you the sign and the post. And if you want to use a different post, that would be a post you need to provide or purchase locally. Or you could always, place the signs on an existing post, that's nearby and provides a similar, level of wayfinding. And then every once in a while, I get a question from local governments about like, can they sign the agreement? Do they need to have like readings with council? It's not really a question I can necessarily answer for you, but just be sure that as you're reading the maintenance agreement, you pay attention at the end where it kind of talks about like who the signatory needs to be. So we just need to have that document signed by the appropriate signatory. So whoever can give us the authority to, go onto your property and place a sign, and whoever is that sort of signatory who can say that the local government is going to be the maintenance authority for that sign moving forward, that's who needs to sign this. Or for some communities, you might need to do some number of readings before that can be signed. So just something to think about locally, because if you need 3 readings, you might be kind of coming up pretty close on April 1st. So just let us know, get in touch with us if your 3rd reading is in early April and it's coming. That's something that you could communicate to us as well. One other question that's come up in the past, and I have addressed it a little bit, is for local governments who might be kind of in the works. They might be working on a local or regional signage package. This might work for you, or you might have a different way to integrate the US bike route. The fact that you're on a US bike route in some other method. So that's certainly an option. You absolutely can work on different wayfinding that works for you. And if you are interested in where we are recommending signage, you could potentially put this signage plan to use another way to inform your own local or regional plan, or just to get a sense of where we're recommending signage. If sharing a shapefile is useful to you, like I said, that is one other resource that we could send your way by request. We could share that with you. And for anybody else who, just wants more information on the US bike routes or state and US bike routes, we do maintain a web page dedicated to this on the ODOT website. And there's a couple key things that are shared on that web page, one of which is a bike route realignment form. So as a local government, if you do recommend a realignment to a US bike route or even a state bike route, which we're not really talking about today, you would actually submit that information to ODOT, because if we're going to be moving US bike routes in the state, ODOT's role is to kind of take that information and then feed it up to this federal body to get that formal approval. And so if you did need to relocate signs, there is a process to kind of work with ODOT about changing that US bike route. So just wanted you to be aware of that, since the question has come up about, projects or like new trail sections, stuff like that. So just make sure that you're checking out that website if you're thinking about proposing a realignment to one of your US bike routes. I'll do another quick check of the chat box. I think I have answered them all. So kind of a last call. If you have a question, definitely submit it. If you feel like you need to talk one-on-one or have like a very, very specific question, you can absolutely get in touch with me. You can use this bikeohio@dot.ohio.gov email. You can also give me a call if you would prefer. And then definitely check out that one pager that was sent to you. Take a look at your spreadsheet and Google Map to get a good idea of where we're recommending signage. And then, if this project interests you, go ahead and determine how you want to participate and submit that signed maintenance agreement to ODOT by April 1st.
Yes, thanks, Kate. And the questions box is still open. As we wrap up, please feel free to check out the handout section of the GoToWebinar. We do have that PDF resource that's available for download. And also, within a few days, we'll send out a follow-up email to all the participants from today with a link to that PDF and also to the video recording of this webinar. We just had a message from Sarah who says, thanks, Kate, and thanks, Sarah. So any closing comments, Kate?
I guess in closing, just, really want to highlight that April 1st deadline. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. Definitely reach out to me sooner rather than later so we can make sure to get any questions addressed. And thank you so much for your interest in participating. We're really excited to get this route signed in the next year.
All right. Well, thanks, Kate, for presenting today. We really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for your participation. Have a great day.
Have a good one. Thanks.